1:15 through 18 BC, kind of all the way through 18, but it kind of goes into another sentence really at the end of 18. You'll see what I mean when we get there. Now, when we start here, first Philippians 1, starting at verse 15, remembering Paul had just been talking about what the Lord has done despite, through, in the midst of his imprisonment. That as he's been imprisoned, I mean, obviously part of him wants to go to Philippi, to go to places and start churches as he has. Yet he says, in the midst of this, the Lord has been at work. In the midst of my imprisonment, a lot of people that would never have heard the gospel have heard it, even of the imperial guard and the people of the palace, and so many. Praise be to the Lord. And this part gets exactly to where our text is for today. All of this having happened now, because of what I have done and what the Lord has done through me, some of the brothers are feeling confident. Go, preach without fear. However, they're in two categories. That's our text for today. Of those that are going out without fear, having seen what has taken place in Paul. Paul puts them in two categories for their motivation. Now, completely different motivation. Nevertheless, same actions. Remember that. Some indeed, parts of those that have gone to preach without fear, preach Christ from envy and rivalry, group one. Others from goodwill. So you've got two categories. First, you have some that are preaching Christ out of envy and rivalry. They see the Lord at work through Paul. Well, I got to make the Lord work through me. I want, and it is sinful. I want what Paul's got. By gum, I'll preach the gospel so that I get what he's got. So the Lord works through me. Or rivalry. I'm a better preacher than Paul. I know the scriptures better than Paul, which would be tough knowing Paul's history, but for the sake of argument, I'm not in prison like Paul. How could the Lord be working through him? The Lord should be working through me. I'm better. And so a rivalry, not a health. Then there is healthy rivalry. There's unhealthy rivalry. Healthy rivalry, let us both go forward and help each other in order to proclaim the gospel message. Unhealthy, I got to show that I'm better than you, however that happens. So there's a healthy and an unhealthy rivalry. One can be friends, the other is out of enmity. That's one category. And you see that today too. There are people that go out and proclaim the word of the Lord to spite people. At one time in the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod, a group left the Missouri Synod, and so Lutheran Church Missouri Synod, and they named their church body the Anti-Missourian Brotherhood. So the whole point, their whole name was to smatter up against the LCMS, Lutheran Church Missouri Synod. That'd be going to proclaim the gospel out of envy or rivalry in a major way, just with the naming of their own denomination. But others out of good will. Praise be to the Lord for that. Very different motivations. The latter, those that do it out of goodwill, do it out of love. And multiple kinds of, they do it out of love for God, number one. That begins everything. They do it out of love for those that do not know their Lord and Savior. And number three, they do it out of love for Paul. They see the Lord at work. They want what Paul has been sharing to go forward, and they want that ministry to go forward and to be proclaimed. They do it out of love in many and various regards. Knowing that I am put here for the defense of the gospel. Paul's there. He can't bring that elsewhere. Out of love for Paul, out of love for God, out of love for the neighbor that does not know the Lord, they bring the word of the Lord out. That is the best motivation. out of love. The former, those that do it out of envy and rivalry, proclaim Christ out of rivalry, not sincerely, but thinking to afflict me in my imprisonment. See, Paul, they're following me now. Yeah, me. Not you, Paul. You're in chief. They're following me. My people. That's the rivalry, the envy that's taking place here. So, what is Paul's response? And we can find these kind of things throughout the world. What then? Only, all of that having been said, only that in every way, whether in pretense or in truth, Christ is proclaimed. And in that I rejoice. What does Paul care about? Paul could have gone after them. Now, if they were tearing people away from the gospel, he'd be going completely different. But they are sharing the gospel message that Paul has been sharing. Wrong motivation. They've been sharing it. If that message had been twisted, then Paul would have said something else. But they are sharing Christ, despite their motivations. And Paul's response, I don't care. Christ is being proclaimed. I rejoice. May we go forward and rejoice in all of those that share Christ. In that name.